Hola, everybody. Welcome to the Heal and Manifest podcast. I am Cynthia Flores, your host. And today I have a special guest, which I will introduce in a minute. But today we're going to talk about cultivating secure attachment and using that as a love language. My guest speaker today, she's going to share a little bit of her story, but I wanted to just get started with this question. I know that we've heard people say that you need to love yourself before you can love someone else, but what does that actually really mean? I know that a lot of the times our nervous system is in survival mode and your inner parts, our inner world are still in a way carrying childhood wounds or trauma. And in today's episode is really for the cycle breakers, the romantics, and the healing girlies who are done with that toxic love, that toxic dysfunctional dynamic. So we're diving deep into what it really takes to build secure attachment, first and foremost within yourself, to regulate your nervous system, and really to call in the kind of love that feels safe, that feels secure, that feels steady, and that feels soul affirming. And I couldn't have a more powerful guest for this conversation, Sonia Fregoso. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a healer, and founder of Obsidian Woman. Sonia blends somatic psychology with ancestral and spiritual wisdom to guide people through deep emotional and energetic transformation. Her work centers on decolonizing healing, nervous system regulation, and body led spirituality. And today, we're talking all things secure attachment, somatic parts work, and what it really takes to manifest secure love as a first gen daughter of immigrants and really women who are breaking generational cycles and patterns. So, Sonia, thank you so much for being here. Been following your journey, and I'm really glad that you reached out and we connected to record this episode, because I think that sometimes there's a lot of talk online around nervous system regulation and building healthy relationships, but the reality is a lot of the times we don't really tune in into what is our history, how does our childhood wounds and the way that we've been conditioned and the way that we operate impact how we show up, first and foremost with ourselves. How do we self-soothe? How do we support ourselves in this process of building secure, healthy relationships? I wanted to ask you, what has been your experience in terms of finding healthy love, and what work did you have to do before that to get to where you are now?
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited to talk about all of this stuff because it is really hard, right? It's hard to be able to get to a place where not only do you love yourself and feel safe and secure with yourself, but you feel safe and secure with another, right? And you can deeply love another intimately, right? Like that can be scary for a lot of people. So I'm really happy that we're having this conversation today. And to answer your question, so I actually last night was talking to my husband, right, about the podcast and, you know, read some of the questions that you sent me. And I was like, do you remember? Like, so we've been together for 15 years.
Wow.
We've been married for 8. Actually, tomorrow's our anniversary, our wedding anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. So we've been married for 8, been together for 15. And yeah, I asked him, I was like, do you remember like my insecurities and like how that would come out and like, what conversations we would have. And, we kind of went back down memory lane and, you know, it, I would say that like my journey to healing the secure attachment is kind of two parts, right? The first part was trying to feel secure in the relationship with my partner. And then the second part was trying to feel secure within myself. And those happened separately for me. Okay. Throughout like, I don't know, maybe 10 years of our relationship. So at the beginning, you know, I was 2 years single, right? I was living the single life. I had just turned like 20 or 21 or something like that. And previous to that, I was in an abusive relationship for 5 years, right? I was cheated on multiple times throughout the 5 years of the relationship, not really knowing until the end of it. I was emotionally abused, psychologically abused, right? And so leaving that relationship was, man, so it was so empowering, right? To leave that relationship. Because one, I was really young. I was like 18, 19 when I left the relationship. And it started when I was like 15 or 16. So it was like, I was so little. I was such a baby, right? And so a lot of what happened in that relationship, I carried it into my next relationship with my husband. And so a lot of the insecurities would come up, like jealousy, right? Because my husband is very fond of making friends with women. Like he gravitates more towards women when it comes to like socializing. And so that was challenging for me because I was like, oh my God, he's going to cheat on me. He's going to, he's going to be just like my ex, and things like that would come up. And so there was jealousy. And then there was also like all my attachment styles would come up, right? So I would, one thing that I want to say is that we all hold all the attachment styles, right? And they come out in different relationships at different times, but we all have all of them. So at the beginning of my relationship with my husband, I was very anxiously attached. I was very disorganized in my attachment too. So I would go from anxious to avoidant to fearful to all those things. And I was afraid he was going to leave me. I was afraid, I was afraid that he was going to leave me. I was afraid that he was going to lie to me. There's just a lot of fear. And this fear doesn't just come from my past relationship with my ex. It also came from my parents' relationship because there was infidelity there, right? And there was a lot of fighting there about, fearful of, my mom being fearful of my dad cheating,
Yeah.
all that. So I grew up seeing that. And when you grow up seeing something like that, what you end up believing is that it's going to happen to you too, right? Like this is the narrative of everyone. And so of course it's going to happen to me. And that's kind of where insecurity starts growing. And so along with that disorganized attachment that I had, it wasn't just the fear that was showing up, but also manipulation started showing up on my part in the relationship. I wanted to take control, right, of my husband's behaviors, of his actions, who he talked to, right, who he hung out with. And so I would do things, and I didn't know back then how toxic I was being, obviously. But now looking back, it's like, oh wow, like that's part of the disorganized attachment, right? It's because we learn that manipulation works, quote unquote works, right? Or gaslighting or things like that. And so one of the tactics that I would use for manipulation was trying to break up with him. Because in my past relationship, that would quote unquote work, right? It doesn't really work. It's just a toxic trait.
And it's a coping mechanism. It's a survival coping mechanism, as you mentioned,
Exactly. So with my ex, if something didn't feel right or I wanted to control the situation, I would just break up with him. And then he would come, asking for forgiveness, love bombing me. And that I was like, oh yeah, that's what I wanted. Breaking up works, right? And then with my husband, I tried that one time and he was like, okay, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, if that's what you want. Right away, I was like, holy fuck, like he's gonna let me go.
This ain't working here.
he's gonna let me walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And that just brought up the fear even more. And I was like, whoa, okay, this breakup thing is not gonna work with this guy. And so it also, he was modeling secure attachment to himself because he was like, I love you, but if this is what you're choosing, I'm gonna I'm going to respect your decisions, and I'll be okay. Right. With my ex, he would lose it when I broke up with him. Right. There was no security there for him. And so my husband was showing me something different. And I was like, I want to be like that. You know,
Hmm.
I want to be able to love someone and still be okay if it doesn't work out. And so that's where it all started. And I was like, okay, I want to be like my husband. I want to be secure. I want to be, because, so another thing that my husband modeled for me is that he like was never really jealous, right? He never really showed jealousy, maybe a few times, but again, comparing to my ex, the jealousy was rapid. Like it was intense, right? It was very chaotic. And so here I am trying to figure out like, okay, this is a very different relationship. This is a very different person than my ex. Like, I have to stop comparing them, you know? My husband is his own person, has his own life, his own beliefs. And so, little by little, I started seeing that and started feeling more secure in the relationship because I was like, the proof is there. He loves me, right? He's nothing like my ex. He's never like hurt me on purpose. He's never lied to me. He's never, right? So I started gathering the evidence in the relationship and I was like, okay, I can trust him, right? All this mistrust is coming from my past relationship and I need
And
to
your
heal
childhood
that
wounds,
and my
right?
childhood wounds.
I think you brought up great points, and thanks for sharing part of your story. I think this is really helpful because it brings light to with a couple of things. One is that love relationships don't feel safe when survival was your first love language,
Right.
technically. If that's what you knew, if that was your conditioning, if that's what you learned. And I heard a couple of things. Of course, in your past relationship there was love bombing, there was a lot of toxic dysfunctional dynamics of abuse, of violence, of manipulation. And again, manipulation, it is at the end of the day a survival coping mechanism because you want to feel safe. And sometimes control is a way that oftentimes is used. The jealousy, the possessiveness in relationships, the control, that is seen. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to get hurt. So I have to figure out, how do I control this person, this situation, so they don't leave me, so they don't cheat on me. When the reality is like the control in these dynamics is in relationships is an illusion. Control in
Yeah.
general is an illusion. And also you mentioned, of course, the love bombing, and in your past, and again the cheating, and also in your childhood, you've mentioned how when you grew up in those dynamics with also witnessing your mom kind of going through that insecurity, that disorganized attachment, that fear, that worry, all of those things. And this is something that a lot of my adult clients come to me, is the impact. They're still healing those childhood wounds of witnessing their parents' infidelity. And we don't really talk about this as much, but this has a huge impact in the way that you perceive love, healthy relationships, secure attachment, again, control, violence,
Hmm.
abuse, what we normalize as in our own family system, and even in our culture, in our
Right.
cultura,
Exactly.
minimizing and like enabling certain behaviors and normalizing and saying, well, that's normal, like men cheat, women stay, etc. Whatever narratives we grew up in, all of these have a huge impact on our relationships and our us feeling safe and us wanting. I know that deep down, as you've been talking about, when we talk about nervous system and building, cultivating secure attachment, is that we all want secure healthy relationships, but again, we're not taught that it's not just about desiring, about wanting, about manifesting, and
Right.
like it's gonna just miraculously appear. It's part of that inner work and really understanding ourselves. And I guess as you kind of talked a little bit of disorganized attachment and anxious attachment, can you define a little bit of what would you, how would you define secure versus insecure and disorganized
Yeah.
attachment?
Yeah. So I really like to group the attachment styles in two, right? There's secure and there's insecure, because the insecure attachments, they all feel very similar. They're very fear-based, right? And then the secure attachment, well, what secure attachment truly feels like is being flexible, right? Flexible with your partner, flexible with, whatever relationship you're talking about, because attachment styles shows up in our friendships as well, right? So being flexible when somebody is not able to meet your needs, right? That is something that we don't learn as children. And that's what builds or creates the insecure attachment. No, I didn't get my need met, so now I have to do this, this, and this, right, to get it met. When a secure attachment is like, I'm going to be okay, right? As adults, right? I'm going to be okay if this need is not met by this person. Like, I can try and meet it myself, right? That's flexibility. That's secure attachment. Another characteristic of secure attachment is simply knowing, like, I can love someone and I'm still going to be okay if things don't work out. That's what it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I like how you describe it because it's about being also flexible and adaptable. And of course, as children, we're not taught to be
Exactly.
flexible because also we depend on our caregivers, our parents
Right.
to give us what we need,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're not adult independent. We're little children needing from our parents to meet our needs when we fall, when we what we need to eat, to change us, etc. So we have to in a way become dependent. And of course, in those moments where our needs are not met, sometimes that can feel rejection, abandonment, that can be internalized as not feeling worthy, not
Mm-hmm.
feeling good enough. All of these different, like, complex narratives and emotions that come up that, again, they repeat in our adult relationships. Whenever someone doesn't want, like, say, our partner doesn't do the things that we want them to do, or even listens to us, or maybe dismiss us, or maybe even not intentionally, but says something, and then we're like, now it's an attack, now it's an attack on my worth, it's an attack on, you don't really care about me, you don't love me, right? Or maybe that takes you back into a memory when you were a child and you kind of regressed, right? So it's really understanding these different
Mm-hmm.
responses and
Mm-hmm.
triggers that come up for you.
And I also want to add that, because, I've worked with a lot of people who would say, like, well, I don't really remember my childhood, right? I don't remember my parents not taking care of me or not meeting my needs and things like that. And that's fine. You don't have to, like, cognitively remember the images. But one thing that does happen, so let's say your partner says something and your body, right, reacts in a certain way, like it tenses up. That is you remembering something, right? That is your body remembering something very similar that happened in childhood. You might not be cognitively aware of it, but when we start paying attention to our body and, like, oh, I'm like really tense when my partner said this, I wonder where this is coming from. Such an important question.
Absolutely. And this, I guess, this brings us into the role of somatic parts work and nervous system regulation. Can you explain what is somatic parts work and how does it actually help in rewiring and shifting and, again, tapping into our somatic, which is our body, when we're triggered or when we're being activated?
So, somatic parts work is basically working with all the different parts of you, right, from your childhood or just your past, somatically. So, with physical sensations. Okay, so our parts live in the physical sensations in our body. And I want you to think about the fight, the flight, the freeze, the submit or fawn, and then the cry for help. Okay, those 5 parts are the main parts that I work with clients when we're doing somatic parts work. So if you think of the fight, that one physically kind of feels like you're getting really hot, right? And you're just like, you just want to, like, you're ready to go, right? You're ready to fight somebody. The flight, right? That you might feel that in your legs. You might want to, like, run, run away, or yeah, your body's like, let's just get out of here, right? And then obviously freeze. You feel paralyzed, you feel locked, you feel like you can't say anything, right? You feel like you just kind of want to shut down, right? And then there's the submissive or shame, right? I want you to think of those two. And that's more of like, your head's down, you feel heavy, and you're just like, I'm a bad person, or I hate myself, kind of thing. And then there's the cry for help, or the needy part of us, right? And this part is actually the one that holds our attachment, the cry for help, because this one is the one that craves connection, right? Like she wants to find that love of her life, right? She wants somebody to save her. She wants somebody to take care of her. And all of these 5, what we would call traumatized parts, show up physically in your body, physical sensation wise. And so when we do somatic parts work, we focus on one of the sensations that's coming up for you. And we talk to that part, and we start first hearing her out. Like, what are you going through? Like, what's your story? Where did this start? Right? And most likely it's going to be, oh, it's when mom did this, or when dad did that, or when my parents were fighting, or, something back in your childhood. And when we do somatic parts work, it's really important to show empathy to this part first, right? Because a lot of times we find the part and clients are like, oh no, it's okay. You don't have to feel that way. It's not like that. And yes, we're going to get there. We're going to let them know that. But the one thing that they were missing in childhood was somebody to listen to them, right? And so that's when we come in and we're like, I'm here to listen. Tell me everything, right? And that's it takes a really long time to work with these parts. But at the end of the day, the more you work with these parts, the more secure you start feeling within yourself, the more secure you start feeling in your relationships, because you're taking care of those little parts that were basically neglected.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And it just reminds me a lot of that parts work, that somatic work is tuning into the sensations, but also it's also seems like it's a lot of inner child work, right? Inner
Absolutely.
child healing of, okay, well, this part, what part of this in your childhood felt this way? And let's kind of honor that. Let's honor that experience. Let's honor that feeling and let's hold space. And then also, again, once there's that space, there's that reprocessing or reframing, that's where I think part of it is like reclaiming and shifting a little bit of that narrative, and also again giving yourself love and grace through this process. And it just seems like it's again connected to that nervous system regulation where we're holding space for
Yeah.
whatever comes up. I'm wondering, how does regulating our nervous system literally change the type of partner that we attract? That's a
Yeah.
question for you.
Yeah. So a lot of the work that I've done with women is actually during their dating journey, right? So they come to me, they start dating, they tell me all about their dates and how they felt and the things that triggered them. And what I usually guide them to do is, okay, this person is not texting you back, right? Tell me what you're feeling in your body. And they tell me, and it kind of goes into like this abandonment sensation. I guess everybody's sensation is different, but at the end of the day, they're like, yeah, this feels like abandonment. And so we go in there and then we start paying attention to what this physical sensation is really saying, right? And a lot of the times it'll say, I'm not good enough to have the partner that I deserve, right? I'm not good enough to be loved. I'm unlovable, right? These are all the things that these physical sensations say. And we have to feel that pain. We have to feel that heaviness in order for it to be released, right? The energy, that heavy energy, we need it to be released, maybe multiple times, right? It's not just going to happen once. For the most part, it happens multiple times. But that is you building a muscle in your body to learn what it feels like to be secure, to be grounded, to feel worthy, right? Because you get to tell the difference between when I'm feeling unworthy, I feel this heaviness. And then when I let that release, I feel more grounded. I feel more confident. My posture's better, right? And this is what it feels like to be worthy, right? And so we create this memory in your body of what it's like to be worthy. And then you're walking around like all confident, and confidence attracts confidence, security attracts security, right?
Right. I love that. And I think I'm wondering what, with that, for instance, that nervous system regulation, right? There's a lot of processing individually. I'm wondering how that may show up when maybe you are with someone who your dream relationship, or just a person that you're trying to figure out. And maybe there's a conflict or a situation that you're navigating, besides, of course, the not responding or being ghosted. But it's more like you're already in that relationship and something triggers you. How can parts work or nervous system regulation help with navigating that situation?
Such a great question. So, one thing that I want to say is that secure relationships, they're not abusive, but they will challenge you.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're talking about here, is the challenge of being in a secure relationship. One thing that I learned to do while I was doing, parts work with my therapist was to let my partner in on the process and letting him know. Like, I explained to him, I'm doing parts work, and parts work is me, talking to the parts of me that have been abused. And sometimes those parts don't trust you. And so I had to differentiate between there's parts and then there's me, right? There's adult me, there's present me, right? I trust you, but I can't help, my little ones if they don't trust you. So I'm going to get a little deep here and a little bit more personal, but I was sexually abused when I was a kid. And so I recently, like 3 years ago, remembered that memory because it was repressed. And so for the past 3 years, I've been trying to heal that part of myself. And sexual intimacy has been really hard, right? And so during that time is when I had to share with my husband, like, look, sex is getting really hard. And so we need to talk more. I need you to understand that I'm not always going to want to have sex all the time, right? And he was very understanding, very gracious. I'm a very lucky person to have a partner like the one that I have. So letting in your partner on your journey of like, look, there's parts work, working through this stuff. They can help, right? If they're open to it, by letting, so my husband talks to my little parts sometimes, letting them know, like, I totally understand, like, it's okay. We don't have to do anything, blah, blah. And that was really helpful. But we don't want to depend on that, right? We want our parts to depend on us, not our partner. And so something else that I learned in my journey was being to talk to my parts in a way that invited them into the present moment, right? Because they're living in the past, right? My childhood self who was sexually abused is living over there, like in the 1980s. And so when you could feel her in your body. She feels very small. She feels very scared. She feels very dysregulated and unsafe. And so part of the practice was sitting by myself in my office and looking around and letting her know, like this is where I am today, right? It's 2022, 2023, 2024. 30 something years old. I'm actually really safe in this room right now. Nothing is happening. What happened to you happened a long time ago, right? It's not happening anymore. Like it gets really deep like that nervous system work.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. And yes, as you mentioned, that secure attachment is, from what I'm hearing, is having a partner who is also secure within themselves,
Mm-hmm.
who can provide and hold space for you for these different parts that need a little bit of tending, that need support, that need to be held, that need to be seen. And that is so important. I think something we don't talk about as much as how important is to also build that security within the other person. And I do think that in order to build that, the other person has to be doing inner work, or has to have had done inner work, and has to have a level of awareness and understanding, holding a lot of compassion and grace through the process. Not that there's perfection, not that there's a perfect person or a perfect couple, because there is no such thing. But it's really about having someone who can also respect and hold space for you, have that sense of security, and working towards that. Because I can't imagine how difficult, and this is all again the work that I've seen is, yeah, we talk about manifesting a healthy relationship, but you could be either doing the work and then being probably again tied to something, or maybe attracting a pattern or a dynamic that kind of seems familiar. And maybe you're just probably feeling stuck in, okay, well, this guy is not even doing any inner work.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you, as a person individually doing inner work, coming back to the somatic parts, we're coming back to the nervous system regulation and building a sense of safety within yourself, you're gonna really like smell the bullshit from miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And realize, hey, this person is probably not doing any inner work. There's no self-awareness. They're not even trying. Why am I going to waste my time, my energy, and everything I've worked for, to be with someone? Not that they're a bad person, it's just we're not in the same level.
Yeah. And that's so important because it's inevitable that you are going to attract a partner that's going to trigger your past. Inevitable. But what is important is that you're both doing the work, right? That is key to a
Absolutely.
successful, satisfying relationship. That you're both growing, you're both building emotional intelligence, right? That you're both building your self awareness, and that you're getting to know each other's story, right? That way, like, oh, that makes sense. I triggered him because I reminded him of his mom, right? Or his dad or whatever. Like, that is so important to know. And I'm not saying, oh, let's use our trauma as excuses for how we behave. No, we're using our trauma as insights of how do we become better? How do we break this cycle?
Absolutely. You definitely brought a big point. And going back to, again, from this insecure, anxious, or disorganized attachment to building that sense of security within yourself, how does that look like? How do we start building that sense of security? I know you mentioned slightly about what, when you do that inner work and parts work and somatic nervous system regulation, you start feeling more confident, showing up, you're glowing. And I'm curious, how does building a secure attachment with yourself look like, feel like, and even in your body?
Yeah. So this work is integrating the attached part of us. There's a lot of work to be done with that little one because she's the one who was trying to attach to mom or dad and wasn't able to attach securely, right? And so throughout your life, she realized, well, if I can't attach to mom and dad, then I'm going to try to attach to something else. And so some people they get attached to work. They become workaholics. They get attached to whatever substance, right? And they start abusing the substance. Or they get attached to a toxic person, right? And so the main goal of integrating this attached part in your life is for her to securely attach to you, the adult version of you, the present moment you, right? Letting her know, like, I'm sorry that we couldn't securely attach with mom and dad. They did the best that they could and it didn't really work out. We're not the only ones, right, who didn't build a secure attachment with our parents. So it's not that something's wrong with you, right? It's just this is kind of what society has provided, I guess, for a lot of people in our culture. And, teaching her that and then letting her know you also don't have to attach to work because, you can change your job to whatever you want. We could do whatever we want. And the substances, like, yeah, I know they feel good, but at the end of the day, they're not sustainable and we're not going to be able to live a good quality of life if we continue this. And then same thing with this toxic person. Like, I know they make you feel good sometimes, but they also make you feel like shit. And that's not sustainable and that's not good for us. But I will always be here. I will always love you, right? I am not going anywhere, right? And you start building that secure attachment with the little one who lives inside you. And wherever it is that she lives, whether it's in your shoulders, your chest, your stomach, your back, she might move around. When you continue to follow her and you continue to talk to her, and then finally one day she's like, okay, I want to release myself from this job of attaching securely to somebody. I just want to attach to you. That's it right there. That's where you two become, securely attached. And she's no longer leading your life. She's no longer leading your choices in your relationship. And she's giving you the wheel, right? To
Mm-hmm.
drive and to lead all of the choices in your life. That is what it feels like.
I love that concept because it's again going back to reparenting ourselves, reparenting our
Mm-hmm.
inner child, reparenting our adult self, and empowering our adult self, knowing that there might be situations and times where we may worry, we may feel anxious. We can acknowledge, honor that, and then still figure out, well, what do we need in this situation? How can I honor my inner parts, and also honor my adult self in terms of where I'm at and what I know that I deserve, what I know that I truly want and desire, and then go from there. I keep coming back to how empowering our choices are. I think that breaking cycles and patterns are about choice. They are about deciding, okay, I see this person is probably not aware. It has a lot of, patterns and trauma that probably hasn't even worked through. And even though it seems familiar, I know that I've been there and I know that it's not going to be good for me. So I'm going to have to choose, even though this person I like, he's hot, etc., like nice person, has a nice family, has a nice career, etc., etc. He's a good person. He's just not good for you. And that's the choice. Okay, now I'm going to have to choose different. I'm going to have to choose a different path. And yes, I may have to be open and vulnerable and communicate and say, this is not going to work. I wish you the best and move forward. But
Mm-hmm.
that's also a pivotal point where that's where we break cycles and patterns as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and all of this work, all the work that we do when we're healing is about reclaiming our choice and power.
Mhm.
Because as children, that was taken from us, right? We were told what to do. We were told what to think. We were told, right? Like our choice and our power was taken from us because that's how parenting evolved, right? Parenting evolved into this like controlling, taking over, like this child belongs to me, right? And so we definitely have to change the way we parent our children, but it's all about reclaiming your choice and power in relationships.
Absolutely. Sonia, what are the last maybe things or message that you would like to tell our listeners? Maybe they're going through a toxic relationship dynamic and they're learning about nervous system regulation, parts work, healing, all of these things. What is it that you would like them to know?
I think when we are going through relationships that are toxic and, it could seem impossible to have something better. right? Or to feel or see change in yourself. And what I want you to know is that it doesn't matter if you have anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, fearful attachment, disorganized attachment. It is possible to build secure attachment.
I
It
love that.
is. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sonia, for this conversation. I know that our listeners are going to really enjoy this and they're going to take a lot of insights and they're going to apply it and just really reflect and have that self awareness around where they are at and where they want to go in terms of manifesting a healthy, secure love, relationships, attachment, which again requires inner work and requires making choices, empowering ourselves, good choices for ourselves requires inner child healing, validation, parenting our inner parts, reparenting our adult selves, and again, tuning into the sensations, the memories in our body, and being able to honor that and shift and reframe our narratives about love and relationships. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you shared all of this amazing information. Where can people find you or work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at La Sonia Fregoso, or you can also find me on my website at obsidianwoman.com. I'm currently on maternity leave, so I'm not doing any one-on-one stuff, but I do have an online course. It's called Unlock Your Inner Healer, and I teach you about somatic healing and building emotional intelligence.
Thank you so much, Sonia. And thank you, everyone who tuned in. If this resonates, share this episode with your loved ones, save it, come back to it whenever you need to. And then we'll be seeing you on the next episode. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.